Welcome to another cosmic episode of the Show. We are two geeks who talk about everything. My name is Aaron, and I'm joined by my cousin and co-host, Landon.
Hello again. Let's do it.
All right, so last time we covered the epic first half of Crisis on Infinite Earths. That's issues 1 through 6 of this 12-issue miniseries. Today we are diving back into the thrilling conclusion of this massive event that changed the history of DC Comics forever. Folks, if you have not had a chance to read this, what DC called a maxi series event, spoilers are ahead. Now, these are spoilers, obviously, for a story that happened nearly 40 years ago, but spoilers nonetheless. Landon, your initial reaction to the second half of this crisis?
Well, I think we had kind of mentioned in the last one too that it gets sad pretty quick. I mean, there are a lot of things to resolve, and I think about how I don't know if you've seen all the Loki,
Yeah,
you've seen Loki 1 and 2. You know how in season 2 it gets very pretty serious about like it's no longer just quirky fun. Now it's like really in danger of reality and people dying and people losing things. And this is similar in that way because it's just like, oh, things are being destroyed.
right.
And so you especially start finding like Alexander Luthor Jr.'s his world's gone, and there's like millions of them, right? I mean, so but we lost a few along the way. What were the ones that are notable that we've lost?
Well, Earth 3 was one of the biggest ones.
Earth 3 was
Um,
that's Alexander Luthor's, right?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
for the most part though, we've really only seen the destruction of like just maybe some one-off worlds that showed up
Yeah.
in continuity
Yeah.
maybe years before, but most of them it's like there are these no-name Earths that are just being destroyed, and so there's no emotional connection to, sure, billions and billions of people dying and being wiped from existence, but then the emotional damage comes when we see real characters sacrificing themselves to try and save what's left of the multiverse, right?
Right. Right.
Um, so here we are in the back half of this, and we've already seen a lot of destruction. We've seen death with the Monitor, but he was just introduced to us a few issues ago, and now here we have the scope and the stakes being brought up to, let's say, cosmic levels,
Right.
um because now we have deaths that impact the readers on a more emotional level. In issue 7,
Right.
have the death of Supergirl.
Which
um
which is, I mean, so in the end, this is like Anti-Monitor has a big play to destroy the 5 Earths that are being protected, right? And so he's has this, I guess, converter, and he is, and they all gather together, and this could have been like the end, right? This is like, but
right.
it stays on. That's probably the most interesting part about this. You know how you can have like story arcs or you can have climaxes and they can go here, but then it goes here and it goes back up again. This is one of those because they come together, they attack and destroy it. But yes, Supergirl dies, and not in the coolest way, really. It was kind of like it's such a frustrating way by being distracted and hit, so
Yeah,
um but a major death nonetheless.
yeah, wiping
Supergirl.
out Superman's cousin was a big deal. That cover for that issue is iconic. Of course, it gives away that she's going to die in
Yeah,
that issue.
yeah, yeah.
um it's like, should they have put that in a like a Mylar bag that says spoiler warning on the cover? But did you have any, this is gonna sound crazy, any favorite moments or scenes that came out of the back half of this miniseries? I mean, that's the death of Supergirl is one of those chilling moments, and we have another death
I was
that
going to say
comes.
the probably even more than that one is the very next issue,
Yeah,
because and it's really back to back. I mean, it's 7 and 8, but it's the Flash dying,
yeah.
so the Flash, Barry Allen is dies, or Michael's, what is his Wesley ship? What's the
John
other
Wesley Ship. Yeah,
John Wesley ship? But yeah, that was pretty rough, especially because he's been. It's not like he was out fighting with the rest of the troop for the entire story. He's been a prisoner the entire time,
right.
and then you get him back only for him to die in a major sacrifice, and that's like what? Now for us, we go back because we're you know older, we're teenagers or preteen reading these things, and so we know about Barry Allen dying just because of knowing, but I can only imagine someone who's been reading The Flash prior to this
Right.
and the impact. I mean, could you imagine just all of a
Yeah.
sudden just The Flash dies? Almost like
Yeah.
the Superman that we got to experience firsthand. I'm just like, what?
Yeah. See, that's the thing. At this point in the history of writing comic books, death was never really dealt with, right? You
Right.
didn't, unless it was like an imaginary story or whatever, you didn't have characters that were dying. But here we have Supergirl and Barry Allen the Flash both dying, and death meant something at this point. When a character died, they stayed dead. These two in particular stayed dead for a very long time. Supergirl wasn't brought back until the early 2000s, when they decided to bring back Superman's cousin as a
Right.
character.
Right. And until that time, we had Matrix, right? We had a not even Supergirl who was being Supergirl, right?
Right. Yeah, she was a shapeshifter.
Shapeshifter, yeah, an alien shapeshifter who was being
Um
Supergirl.
and then Barry Allen, of course, didn't come back until what, Final Crisis in the mid 2000s,
Yes. Yeah.
mid to late 2000s.
Yeah.
Um, that is, it's it's so crazy to think that these characters, their deaths really, were supposed to mean something, and then of course, Superman comes along and dies in 1994,
Right.
but then comes back a year later.
Yeah, I know.
And
I
it's
know.
like let's open the door for anybody who died to
Anyway,
come
get
back.
back and come back.
Then
It's like a soap opera.
Jason Todd comes back.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Green Arrow comes back, and it's just, it becomes this thing where death is a revolving door, and as long as you can keep your characters alive, then it doesn't matter if you kill them, because we'll find a way to write them back into the story.
Yeah, that's
And
exactly.
I and I get what you're saying too. Like, as far as I'm concerned, like, Wally West was my Flash. Growing up,
Right.
he was the Flash
Now this is the one
because
that we've talked about because he's the one that I've always thought of, right? That was the funny one.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
he's the
right,
one you
right.
get in like the Justice League animated series.
That's always
Um,
making a joke.
right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's my favorite one.
So Barry Allen is the one that we see, of course, in the live action 1990 TV series with John Wesley Shipp. And then, Barry Allen is the Flash in the more recent um, CW show.
Right.
Uh, it's just it's just funny to me because, again, Wally West, for I don't know what was that, 20, almost 25 years, was the Flash. That's it.
And yet,
And
yet,
so, like, it's like you said, we knew, without reading Crisis on Infinite Earths, that Barry Allen had died.
right,
We knew that
right.
he had sacrificed himself in some big epic event that then led to Wally moving from Kid Flash to the Flash. And
Yeah.
and so, to me, it's not a big deal to go back and read this story and see, oh, Barry Allen died, but you're right. I wonder what it feels like, or what it felt
For
like.
someone who grown up yeah.
Yeah, if
No,
you'd
for
read if
sure.
you'd grown up from the 60s and 70s, and all you knew was the Flash is Barry Allen and Kid Flash is this kid named Wally West, screw that kid.
I
Barry Allen's the smart guy.
I just wonder if if it was getting stale, because I didn't really read anything prior. You just got to wonder about stuff like that. We talked about things that were notable. I did think it was, again, another. You have this climax that happens again here, but then you go to a whole new level. The Animonitor has to gets a new body, and he then decides he's going to go back in time. He's going to go back in time to go and affect things. Um, and I think of different movies we've watched over the years, there's just a lot of parallels, this type of thinking, So you have multiverse and you have traveling through time to try to affect time, and there's just been so many movies and stuff. So this is a really great epic story that happens, but the Spectre gets involved,
Yeah.
and so anybody listening, if you don't know who the Spectre is, well, it, here's the challenge with the Spectre. The Spectre seems absolutely all powerful, that could do anything at any time, anywhere, but is held back by cosmic laws, which seem to bend at convenience. So I've always had a challenge with the Spectre because of the great all powerful nature of the Spectre. Nonetheless, he's helpful in a pinch,
Yeah.
So, and
It
this
just
is a
depends on
pinch,
who's writing him at that, at any given time. It's
right?
like, all right, can the Spectre do this? Well, this time he can.
But no, yeah, but no, he's limited by cosmic forces.
Yeah.
You know?
Is God's gonna step in and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. You are my spirit of vengeance, okay? You're gonna chill out here.
Well,
But
he
God,
basically shatters space and time. I mean, there's like an overload. So then now all um these five universes have now at this point merged together.
right,
And so everything that's been protected to keep from being destroyed now goes like into one.
right.
So
I was like,
that's kind of how everything kind of gets sucked in together. And remind me though, could who what determined whether somebody could remember it?
uh, oh my gosh, I
Right?
can't
Because
remember.
didn't
Like
some
but
people
there's
remember?
only no, there's only one character who remembered the crisis, and that was Psycho Pirate.
Okay. Okay.
At the end of the story, he is the only one who remembers that worlds lived and worlds died.
But okay, except for the four that went off to a parallel paradise universe.
Right, right. So you've got
Okay.
Alexander Luthor saves Kal-El from Earth 2
Yeah.
and Lois Lane from Earth 2 and Superboy from Earth Prime.
Yeah.
And so the four of them go into what is sort of described as a pocket dimension
Right, right, right.
where it's like, well, what does that even mean? Of course, that's never expanded upon until 20 years later in Infinite Crisis when we're reintroduced to these same characters so many years later. But yeah, so they survive, and obviously, wherever they are in their little pocket dimension, they're going to remember that the crisis happened, and they're going to remember um, all of the sacrifices that were made to create this new reality.
Well,
Um,
what did you think about the last issue?
which part?
Just
The
the
rebooted continuity?
just yes. Well, not just the rebooted continuity, but as far as like the final battle with Antimonitor, how that went down, and just Superboy Prime. Because, and I ask you this way because obviously we'll talk about it in a second. What happens after this? You have everything kind of done, but this pocket dimension obviously produces feelings, for these people there that lead towards things later. And
Right.
so I wanted to ask your thoughts about it. Do you feel like it was nice and buttoned up? Do you feel like it do you have any problems with how it ends out?
I don't, because at the time, it seems like this whole thing was designed to um give these characters a happy ending, right? You've
Yeah.
got Superman, who this is the golden age Superman. This is the first superhero from Action Comics #1,
Right.
and his the love of his life, Lois Lane. They are getting their happy ending, right?
Right.
This is what we're thinking, that they are going off to some paradise pocket dimension where they will live out their years in happiness. And then for whatever reason, let's bring along Superboy Prime, and of course Alexander Luthor Jr. is the one who is creating this pocket universe for them to have. So you've got these two tagging along while Superman and Lois have their retirement in paradise.
Right.
And so we're led to believe that this is going to be some great existence for these characters, and then they're forgotten about for 20 years. Like no one knows they existed. And then we come along later with Infinite Crisis, and we find out, well, that's not the case. It wasn't
Right.
this paradise. It was a place where they were able to see everything that's going on in the now singular DC universe. And you've got this brat, Superboy Prime, who decides
And he
that's
is a
not how
brat.
that's not how things are supposed to be. No, 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 no. Because he grew up in a world like ours, where he was reading the adventures of his heroes in DC Comics, right? And then suddenly he is the only superhero in his world when he finds out that he, in fact, is Superman, or would grow up to be Superman, but he didn't have that chance because his world was destroyed before he had a chance to become Superman. And so he's bitter about that. He's bitter about the things that he's seeing happening in this reality, that the Superman we know in the new continuity dies. That's not supposed to happen to Superman.
What remind me what happens to Golden Age Superman and Lois?
Well, she winds up getting sick. She may have cancer.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
I know she ends up dying during
Right.
Infinite Crisis.
Right.
Um, and
We need to do
so
one on that too. We need
yeah,
an episode on that too,
yeah,
because
I need
that's
to go back and read that one. It's been a long time since I've read that story.
I enjoyed that story. But
It's
I have
really
to
good.
admit, I read Infinite Crisis and didn't go back and read Crisis of Infinite Earths before I started it. I just kind of jumped into it and I didn't make connections. And then when I later reread Infinite Crisis of Infinite Earths, I was like, ah, Alexander, what? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? He was like the good
he
guy,
was a
you
good
know?
kid. Yeah,
It's
yeah, that
almost like
was
the whole Hal Jordan parallax thing. It's just like, what?
yeah.
You know?
Where did this when you when somebody invites you to a pocket dimension, say no, because apparently that's what turns you into a villain.
Yeah, well, and it was supposed to be like a paradise. I can't understand. Like, be thankful. Be thankful for your pocket paradise.
Right.
Apparently not.
But
He went
yeah,
crazy.
the so I had never gone through and read, like, I had a basic understanding of what Crisis on Infinite Earths was.
Yeah.
But the first time I read it was just before Infinite Crisis came out,
Oh,
because
so you did it then? Yeah.
I knew Infinite Crisis was going to be a direct follow up to Crisis on Infinite Earths, and so I wanted to know the details at that point. So that's when I went back and got the paperback edition and read all 12 issues. And uh gosh, yeah, to for that to come out in Infinite Crisis, it's funny when a new writer comes along and decides, hey, you know what, these characters that we haven't done anything with, let's bring them back. But you know what? Let's bring them back as bad guys.
Yeah, yeah. That is how it goes. But wow, what a fun storyline. At this point though, now they have a few things. Well, you had the Flash, the CW's version of Crisis of Infinite Earths, or in the what's called Arrowverse.
Right.
Um, I
There's a
want to,
new movie too.
yeah, and
I
the
don't
new
know if you've
movie's
seen
coming out too. Yeah.
an animated version of
Well,
it. That's it's supposed to be a three-parter.
yeah, it's
Like,
three parts. When does
just
this
the
come
first.
out?
I'm not sure. I think the first part is out now. If you, it might be on Max already.
Oh, good. I need to read it. It's got 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb, but it's
I
got all
haven't.
my good voice actors. It's got my Jensen Ackles for Batman. It's got Matt Bomer for Flash. Zachary Quinto's Lex Luthor's voice. Lou Diamond Phillips is the Spectre. That'll be nice. Nolan North, you know his name, right? He's from He's the voice actor for Uncharted, the
Yeah.
game.
He's
It's
also
Hal Jordan.
Superman and Superboy and Young Justice.
Oh yeah, Darren Criss is Superman's voice. Darren Criss, he played the music guy from the Flash show,
He was on
which
Glee for
is
a
kind of
lot of
cool because he
years.
was in Glee with Grant Gustin. Um, and then I don't know if I know the other ones, but um, I uh I think I need to watch that then. Oh, Alexandria Daddario, remember her? That girl from uh
Percy Jackson movies.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, she's Lois Lane. So I mean seriously, I'm interested in watching it. Uh Hopefully they'll I feel like the HBO Max shows have done pretty good. You know, I've liked them thus far. Have you watched many of those?
I watched Peacemaker.
Oh, no, but I mean the
Oh,
cartoon movies that they've been
the
doing.
animated movies, yeah, yeah. So I haven't watched any of the more recent ones. Um,
I watched The Long Halloween, both of those. That was good.
I don't think I've seen any of them since they did the Death and Return of Superman.
Yeah.
Those two movies back to back. I watched
Yeah.
both of those.
The Flash Arrowverse, there were, don't get me wrong, there were aspects that I liked along the way, and I thought they used it well to
Hmm.
kind of sunset Oliver Queen. Um, but it's just how can you take all that and put it into a show like that? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I think they did a great job with what they had.
Yeah, then
You
that's a good way of saying it. They did the
they were
best they
obviously
could have done.
limited in scope. It's a TV show on the CW, so obviously
Yeah,
the uh the budget's not going to be what you need for an infinite multiverse. But I think they did fine with the resources they had, with the characters they had access to. And I will forever love it for bringing back Tom Welling
oh,
as Clark
that's
Kent.
everything for me. That was everything for me.
Just that one scene in Smallville
That's
between
all I need.
him and the John Cryer version of Lex Luthor. I That's all I need to see.
That was so
That's it.
good.
Um,
That
and I
was so
loved
good.
as well. Other than that, I loved seeing um Kevin Conroy play a live version of Lex Luthor for the first time.
That's true. Now
For the only time.
it was a
I didn't like that he
frustrating
was
role.
evil.
Yeah. That's me too.
He turned into the bad guy.
Yeah,
But again, that just goes back to what Harvey Dent said in The Dark Knight. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
right.
And and so that sort of came true for this world's version of Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
But it was so much fun seeing him on screen and seeing him get to play the role that he had embodied for so many years in animation, and finally get to see him, like, his face
yeah.
uh and his voice as
Oh
Bruce
yeah.
Wayne. So
No,
cool.
that really was cool. I felt bad for the character of John Diggle, David Ramsey. Um, he at the very end, it's like you're going to be the new Green Lantern,
Right.
and then it's like,
By the way, we're not going to do anything
oh,
with
I
that now.
guess not. Never mind.
Right.
Actor, he's just like, oh man, I had a shot. I was going to be it.
Every time he showed up, like the next season, whenever he showed up in another show, it's like, are you going to do anything with this?
Or do you have yeah.
What's happening here? And what was confusing about it was he showed up for an episode of Superman and Lois, but that show doesn't even take place in the same universe as
You're
the
like,
rest of the
okay,
Arrowverse.
yeah.
So what's Diggle doing there?
What are you doing, Diggle? Yeah.
Oh man, it's so weird. All right, so let's go back to the kind of wrap up things with the original story, because I want to bring up a point.
Yeah.
Um, but first, let me ask you, so the multiverse has collapsed into one universe. All the history is altered, and you've only got so many characters that survived, and only one character remembers all the things that happened to the continuity. What do you make of the way that they rebooted everything? and you had this brand new continuity with a brand new history and everything starting over from scratch.
And if I'm right, um, so I'm trying to think if there was any deviations from, because I mean, remembering that this is the way that I know Superman and Batman and all of these, right? I mean, so I don't know about deviations from what existed prior to that from an original.
Hmm.
I look at, I mean, you have Bruce Wayne becoming Batman, parents die, you have Superman being in the cornfield, and I guess Wonder Woman, Themyscira. The thing that I guess with the Flash, when did we get the Flash? When did the Flash enter into continuity then because of Barry? How did that get handled again?
I'll be honest, I don't know because he just took on the suit there at the end of this story. He
And then
took
that
he
was
he takes on the mantra or the mantle of the Flash, and then
there's no memory.
his series begins, and it's Wally West is the Flash. His uncle used to be the Flash, but sacrificed himself. But what did he sacrifice himself for if we
Because
don't
he
know
would
what the current
remember.
crisis was?
Nobody
Right.
remember.
No one remembers
That
the crisis.
so that's
So,
that's the one that I have trouble with. But there
right.
any other deviations from, because
Um,
everything else I think obviously there was just no Supergirl. I mean, it's just not like there wasn't a replacement until they just brought in Matrix the shapeshifter, but
right.
I think
Well,
they just got rid of people, didn't they?
so the thing is, like, so they streamlined the canon, and yeah, the idea was, all right, we want to make this easier for people, for new readers, to jump on board
Yeah,
and get with the program with all of these iconic characters that we know and love. At the same time, you lose a lot of their rich backstories,
that's true. Well,
like
that's exactly right. Everything gets
like.
cut off.
But then it's like, oh, but we have to pick and choose which stories we keep as a part of that character's history, right?
Right,
So you think about the epic storyline that introduced Batman to Ra's al Ghul or
right,
Ra's al Ghul, whatever
right,
you want to call it. Like it is such a good storyline from the 70s. You can't get rid of that because that is a character that is key to so much of who Batman is
right. His
moving
training.
forward.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so you can't just eliminate that storyline with him and Talia and the idea of the Lazarus pit. Uh, you know,
Right.
the what we talked about in the last episode with the Judas contract with Teen Titans
Yeah.
and Dick Grayson used to be Robin. Well, how did he used to be Robin when we're entering into this new continuity where Dick Grayson is already Nightwing and Robin is Jason Todd?
Right.
How when did Batman have another Robin? At
Yeah.
what point? What point did that happen?
Good
And
point.
so you've got these things that are happening, and it's like, well, let's just we remember that Barry Allen sacrificed himself, but we've forgotten that Supergirl ever existed
Yeah. Yeah.
because she's never mentioned,
Yeah.
and it's because the writers, they wanted, or the powers that be at DC Comics, they were like, all right, we're redoing Superman. Okay, we're eliminating all of that ridiculous Silver Age crap. There's only going to be one kind of kryptonite. It's going to be
Right.
green, and that's what kills him.
Right.
And he is going to be
For
the
now.
last. Right? Yeah, yeah. He is going to be the last son of Krypton. We don't want any other Kryptonians coming around.
For now.
Superman is the only one. That's it. He's the only survivor. Krypton's destroyed. There are no other Kryptonians. There's no General Zod. There's no Jor-El. There's no Kara. None of it. Get out of here.
And
And
then they reintroduce stuff.
well, then years later, it's like, well, we've written ourselves into a corner. How can we change things? Let's reintroduce Supergirl as a character, not the shapeshifter. We're bringing back
Or bring her
Superman's
back.
cousin.
Right.
So your big no flights, no tights things only go so far. And then it's like, oh, we got to continue the story somehow. And so, all of these big changes are happening. You've got this one new continuity. I can't help but wonder, did the fans in those days react to this restructuring of these DC universe the way like that I reacted
Well, you have
when
to
the new
remember
52
too,
hit in
there
2011?
wasn't social media like there is now. where people can voice. I mean, people would write letters to people, but I mean, it's different. You're gonna have less subscriptions bought, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think back then everything was governed by how many people were buying comic books each week.
Well,
And that's
and it
pretty much
works.
it, because that's all that would make the difference. And I guess you would say, oh, people aren't buying enough. I keep hearing Supergirl. We're gonna add Supergirl. You know what I mean? As opposed to online flair,
And it worked. Like you had people suddenly, rushing out and buying these, pulling these new comic books off the stand. You had this new version of Superman that's coming out. You have
Right,
this new version, this Batman Year One, this dark and gritty version of
right, right,
Batman that's retelling his origin story. You've got this
right,
new version of Wonder Woman that's coming out. You've
right.
got this new kid named Wally West, this is the Flash,
Sure.
who's highlighting his own title. So it worked. It worked to sell comics
Yeah.
in the beginning. That's how these things always work. Like I said, I was I was just this side of pissed off when they decided to reboot the universe for the new
New
52.
52.
I thought
Right.
it was the dumbest thing ever,
Right.
but it worked.
It
It
worked.
got people into the comic shop to buy comics for a few months, and then that's it.
Then that's
Like
it.
then the sales dropped back off,
Right.
and because people didn't like it, they were telling mediocre stories for the new
Well,
52.
the other side too is I think people appreciated having a revamp, because sometimes, and remember, we dealt with this with Superman, with the different storylines of the different comic books, Action Comics, and Superman, and so when you have different comics and they have, or Dark Knight and or Detective and Batman, if it's following continuity, great. If it's not, then you're having different storylines, same character, different feel, different vibe of what's going on. And then you have some sort of event that happens, and then they all tie in together weirdly. And then, so from an outsider coming in, or one who used to collect and then wants to get back in, you're like, I don't even know where to begin. So something like that happening can make you go, oh, well, now I can get back in. I can start here. I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to start my 2024 reading my comic books again. But then very quickly you're back in these different. So I think the comic book, whether it's, I don't know how Marvel is, but for DC, I think they've had a problem. And you know what? Let's just say for a second, it's not just the comics, it's also the movies. They have a really big problem with sticking to a plan and going full force and investing in it. And that's true for the comic books, and it's true for the movies, and maybe the shows. They've done a little bit better job with it, to be honest, but
There's
crazy.
I feel like with both the comics and certainly with movies, there's too much meddling coming
Yeah,
from the suits, right?
yeah, yeah,
If you would just let a creator be creative,
yeah.
then you wouldn't have any problems.
No, no. I
But
mean, that's why Favreau, does a good job. That's why Feige does a good job. It's because when you have certain people that you empower and you give them the ability to do what they're going to do, they're going to succeed. But when the suits step in or they spread themselves too thin, that's what hurts people. That's what hurts Feige. You know what I mean? And trying to keep things going. Too spreading too thin, and then people meddling in because of trying to placate to the audience a little too much. There's a fine line. Fine line.
the audience, they're placating to the bottom line.
Well,
They're
well, that's placating to the audience. To be fair,
no,
it's all about
no,
getting the money, getting the
it
green
is. It's
attendance.
all about getting the money, but more often than not, and this is probably a conversation for another time, but those suits, those producers, they don't understand what the audience wants.
Right,
They have it in their head what they think is a blueprint for making money,
right,
and they just want to follow that blueprint. Well, the audience doesn't follow a blueprint every time. They don't want to see the same thing over and over again. The
right. Because
audience
we're not
wants
an
something
equation.
different.
Right.
And so, yeah, we're not following an algorithm like you are.
Yeah.
You think this is the equation that leads to getting you money, but you are forgetting that your audience is a big variable.
Yeah. Your
And
fandom is, yeah,
so
for
so
sure.
it's not like that. We're running out
Yeah,
of
we're out
time,
of time.
but
Yeah.
I do want to ask, uh how do you think this whole thing influenced the comic book industry as a whole, not just DC Comics? Obviously we've talked about how it affected that, but
Well, I
how
think. we wouldn't. I don't know that we would be where we. And this might be a jump, but I feel pretty confident about it. I don't think we would have the Marvel Avengers Endgame, this whole thing that we have on the Marvel side without obviously the Infinity Gauntlet series that happened, which I think also happened as a reaction to, or at least was influenced by the Crisis of Infinite Earths. So I think Crisis of Infinite Earths was a major play by a major comic book entity, and I think Marvel in turn said we got to do that. We need it. We're going to do something hugely epic that ties in everything together and everybody together in a huge thing that's going to impact the entire universe of it. And so where we are from in this comic book superhero age and all that, this decision in the 80s, I think was huge for comic book adoption and interest and superhero interest that's led to where we are. It may not be one where people go back and say, "Oh, I attribute that to Crisis of Infinite Earths," but it was a domino that fell, is what I mean. It was a domino that fell that influenced other dominoes to fall. So I think it's hugely impactful in ways that most people probably don't even realize.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I'm only going to speak to the DC side of things as far as like how it affected storytelling, because it seems like if, and I could be wrong, but if I'm remembering right, this is the first time there was a big, huge crossover event that involved the entire universe, right? Before that, yeah, you had all your little crises
Right.
happening within the
Crossover.
pages of Justice League,
Yeah.
and that might have been like 2 or 3 issues of Justice League, and that's it. It
Team
didn't tie
ups.
over into other. Yeah, you had your
Yeah.
team up with Earth Two and Justice Society,
Yeah.
and you go and pay a visit to the bad guys on Earth Three and have Christmas together or something. But those are your one offs, and those weren't a big deal. They felt like a big deal, but then you get to the crisis, and it's like, whoa, this is a big deal. And so then it's like, all right, it's like with Endgame. How do we top this? All
Right.
right. The
Right.
audience is expecting us to top
Now what are you gonna
Endgame
do?
every time we do a new movie.
Yeah.
Can't do that. But
Right.
then, like, almost like on an annual basis, DC is coming out. All right. What can we do now? The first big crossover event that happened with DC post crisis was just in 1986 or 87 with the Legends story.
Right.
And then you had gosh, there were a couple others, War of the Gods that came spun out of Wonder Woman, and then
Right.
you had Armageddon 2001 that took place
Right.
throughout all of the DC
Right. Right.
annuals of the 1991, and it's just like it's one after the other until like
Major arcs and major
yeah,
arcs happening
they tie into
consistently.
everybody. So you get to one like the final night where the sun goes out, and it's like, well, how is this affecting every comic book on our slate this month? And so every comic book
Right.
has the final night emblazoned on the front of it, and it's like,
I think
so how is
people
the
in
sun going
it's
out
like an
affecting
epic.
Batman?
It's like an epic, the introduction of an epic comprising storyline. But I think we both agree that I mean, it got a little oversaturated, right?
Oh yeah, it waters it down. If there's a big epic that's happening every year, it's like, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why am I paying attention to this? And
It
why am
would
I
have been,
getting the other things?
yeah,
There are a few that come out that make sense. And I think we ought to cover those too. Like Zero Hour, I think
yeah.
was a great one. Of
0 hours
course, we've
great.
already talked about Infinite Crisis. Things like that make sense as a big crossover event.
Right,
But there are some that just fall by the wayside, and it's like this. I don't care about this story. This
right,
is dumb.
right,
Um, yeah. So it's a two-edged sword. You've got the idea of the epic crossover, and then you've got the execution of it.
right.
And in some cases it works, and in other cases it's just like, what did we do? All right, we
Yeah,
tried a thing. Let's not talk about it ever again.
right, right, right. No, but definitely glad that this one started off because although yes, oversaturated, we've had a lot of good ones, along the way. So, and we should cover those at some point.
Absolutely. All right, so this is going to wrap up our Crisis on Infinite Earths two-part extravaganza. Thanks again to our awesome listeners who have joined us in delving into this classic What other storylines are you interested in hearing us discuss? We've mentioned a few of the big ones. Of course, they can be the big universe shaking crossover events, or we can focus on some of the more grounded storylines that focus on one or just a few characters. Let us know in the comments. We will check those out, and we definitely take those to heart. We want to cover what you want to hear. Excuse me. In the meantime, make sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss out on our next big comic book chat. Until next time, have a great whatever it is, wherever you are.
Goodbye.